morning, Sheridan.
Good morning, Samantha. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for coming to see me today.
That's my pleasure, and thanks for seeing me.
Anytime, anytime. Now, I know you've already gone through all of your initial paperwork with the reception at the front, but I did just want to go into a little bit more detail about our confidentiality agreement, just before I get you to sign that one.
Yes. Yeah, that was explained.
It was explained.
Yeah.
Amazing. So just to go into a little bit more detail, as you would know, being already someone who works in the social field, what the limitations are.
Yeah.
So we are to keep all of your information confidential until or if it gets to a point where it would be putting yourself in harm or there would be other people in harm's way as well. Also, if it is court ordered to be subpoenaed by a court judge that they needed to see this information, I would be under obligation to share the information we talk about in our sessions with them.
Yeah, that's totally understood.
Yeah, but this would all be signed by yourself before any information would be released. Yeah, so does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I will get you to sign the confidentiality form for us now, just to give your informed consent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful. Now, as our session goes through, is it okay with you if I jot down a few notes as we go?
Yeah, certainly.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
just so I've got something to reflect back on, and any information that I feel like is a little bit more important or we need to delve into more, I'll just pop those down here.
Yes, that's fine.
Beautiful. So to get us started, do you want to talk me through what's brought you in today?
Okay. My former husband passed away 3 years ago. I was his carer for 5 years prior to that.
Oh, wow.
He had Alzheimer's, but it wasn't diagnosed. They thought it was symptoms that presented with him having had a stroke. I've got a lot of carer guilt, even though it's that much later. If I'd known what I knew now, I could have handled it a lot better.
Yeah, so your husband had a stroke. How many years ago was that?
He had a stroke in 2009, within 12 months of us being married.
Oh, okay.
And initially it was classed as a minor stroke, but he deteriorated quite progressively from then.
Okay.
Yes.
Talk me through that.
He was a very vital man when I met him. Even though he was in his 50s, he was very vital, very great pride in his work, always outgoing. Yeah, fantastic person, great conversationalist, made me laugh more than anyone has in my life, and he had a stroke due to overwork. He was a windscreen fitter, and the business that he went into when we started a business ourselves took off a lot quicker than what we thought it would, and he had a stroke due to that. At the time, he went to the wrong hospital and they diagnosed it as minor. So he returned to work.
So it was more serious than what they initially thought?
Yes,
okay.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
And sorry if I jump around a bit. But
no, you're fine. I can put the pieces together.
So he returned to work, but gradually over the next couple of years, he became quite depressed. He would just not turn up for appointments.
Was this due to some of the physical effects?
No, he didn't get any physical effects from the stroke. He was perfectly normal physically. He still had the strength that he always had. He actually lost, what he lost was his ability for suburbs and for names of cars.
Oh, so it was a memory?
It was a very huge memory thing. He couldn't remember members of his family. He'd grown up in a huge family. He knew basically every street on the south side and how to get from point A to point B. And he lost all his memories of suburbs, streets, could still drive. So anything that was how do you say it? Songs he could remember. But certain things he just lost. And one of the main things was his memory of the names of cars, which is a pretty big... Well, just as a windscreen fitter, your main detail, unfortunately. Yeah. And he could see a car on the street and say, oh, that's a so-and-so, and what model it was. And so you've got to order windscreens specifically for model cars, and then the change of model when they go from a year to the next year and all of that sort of thing.
With all the updates that come through. Yeah.
So it put a lot more pressure. I was still working full time. My son, who lived with us, was in high school at that time, so it put a lot more pressure on us to try and help him look up. Anthony used to come home, look up screens for him in the afternoon, do a few bookings.
And try and help him.
Yeah, and it was extremely patient, you know, for a teenager. It was probably
I can imagine that would have been quite hard for him as well, watching that.
It was. The decline, it was the first father he'd actually had in his life, because his own natural biological father was never in his life from when he was about 2.
Okay.
So
it was really that father figure for him.
Yes, it was. Yep. And Graham was extremely patient with Anthony. And as I said, so we went along for a couple of years, and then it just deteriorated to beyond my control. I was seeking help. I kept looking up things for Alzheimer's and dementia and thinking every box has been ticked.
Yep.
But the medical profession kept saying, no, it's due to the stroke.
Okay.
So no matter what I said, I wasn't getting listened to.
Yeah.
He was under a neuropsychologist who did cognitive tests, and they worked out that his cognitive skills were basically, not even up to probably grade 3, grade 4. So his understanding had drastically changed.
Yep.
So he basically kept going with the business. Anthony spent most weekends and evenings with him to try and keep it going. So monetarily, it really had a big effect on what's going to happen.
Did that affect your son's schooling as well, given that he was putting in that extra time?
I would have thought so. I think it's more evident now than what it was then. Something we do in our family, and that's we get through things and then fall to pieces afterwards. Yeah, unfortunately. It put a lot of pressure on me at work. I know that was my out.
You go to get through
sanity.
it, and then you deal with it later.
Yeah. It's horrible, you know. From someone that was always there and my hero and my go-to person, I couldn't even ask him to go to the shops and get an onion, because what was an onion?
Okay.
That's where the level of understanding was
had diminished.
It was quite.
So it would be quite
devastating.
Heartbreaking to watch.
It was.
Yeah.
And my 2 girls were living up in Bridie at the time, so was very hard for them to try and help.
Yeah.
And they suggested that maybe it might be better if he moved up there, or we move up there.
So you were living
I was living on the south side of Brisbane at the time, at Parkinson. And as I said, things just became totally impossible, so we had to wind up the business, which was a pretty big step there again financially.
Yeah.
Put a lot more pressure on me, and eventually went on a disability pension.
So you were basically having to be the sole provider, having to do all the house, everything that goes with that.
Yeah. He lost all interest, where he was a reasonably good cook.
Nothing.
Would not get up. Very rarely, I mean, a lot of days, he would stay in bed.
Because he was quite depressed.
He was very, very depressed. So they kept trying to get him to various psychologists and people that could help him, but no matter what they did, he was just very, would not recognise how far down he was or anything like that, and then he stopped going to appointments.
Was he maybe within his understanding and a little bit of denial about the situation
Very.
as well?
Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But on having had him diagnosed, when we moved up to Bridie, it became evident that it wasn't as so much as denial as he didn't have the understanding. He could not understand. He could not comprehend what I was saying.
Yeah.
So he'd just sit when I was talking to him and look at a TV.
Okay.
And it was like,
so
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Total breakdown.
Yeah.
In communication.
Yeah.
I
can imagine how frustrating that would have been.
It was frustrating, and I must admit, got very angry.
Yep.
Very, very angry at times, but
Yep.
He was diagnosed a month, I think, before he passed away. We got the official diagnosis.
Yep.
So that was...
So it had gotten quite far before anything.
Yes, 7 years later.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yep.
so he was in quite late stages. It was early onset Alzheimer's dementia,
Yep.
whatever you want to call it. I moved up to Bribie and I got a job at Bribie Respite.
Okay. Yep.
Well, I didn't start there, I volunteered there.
Yep.
Graham went there during the day.
And was that
it's
something that you were passionate about, that you wanted to be involved in?
I think it was one of the most rewarding jobs I've
Yep.
ever done. And I was studying a certificate in aged care.
Yep.
Or individual care, because the place has aged and it has young people with disability.
Yep.
And it was fantastic to see Graham in that environment, because he thought he was going to work. That gave him a reason for getting up every morning.
Yep.
And it was just a day facility. So they picked them up on the bus, they had morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, go home. So he was happy. When he was there 4 days a week,
yep.
he was fantastic. Well, as good as he could be. But then you had Friday, Saturday, Sunday at home. Just, here we go again. Decline.
Yep.
Yeah. Friday, what was the point in getting up?
Wow, okay.
Yeah. In any way during that time, I became quite passionate, because I realised the service manager there basically had him in a special unit for people with dementia.
Yep.
And I said, how can you pick that up? And she said, please don't tell me he hasn't been diagnosed.
Oh my goodness.
So
the people within the respite centre had already
picked up on this. It was very evident. It was suggested that he stopped driving. He shouldn't have been driving.
Okay.
And
so he was still driving up
He was still driving up until that point, which was
a little bit scary.
a lot scary. Because his even spatial skills were very diminished.
The decision making as well during
it's very low end of the scale.
Yeah.
And he started getting worse and worse and worse up here. I started going to courses, because at that point I had a social support worker at Alzheimer's.
For yourself?
For myself,
yes.
And for Graham.
Okay.
To help him through. But more for me, it kept my sanity.
Yep.
And they suggested trying to get a formal diagnosis, so I contacted someone at North Lakes. There's a big centre down there. He went, we got a social worker, a neuropsychologist, a speech therapist, and then they take it all to now I've forgotten the name, geriatric.
Okay.
A specialist in that field.
Yep.
Yeah. And she was the one that made the diagnosis. But at that point, they did PET scans and things like that, and his brain activity just was non-existent, basically.
Wow.
Very hard. And I was doing a lot of courses in managing and distraction, basically.